to plot events is one of the most fundamental decisions that filmmakers make about relaying story information through the plot. Unlike story order, which is chronological, plot order can be manipulated so that events are presented in non-chronological sequences that influence importance of meaning or that establish desired expectations in audiences. Let's look at a couple of examples so you have a better understanding of what I'm talking about. Citizen Kane, considered by many to be one of the greatest films ever made, involves the telling of the story of a man called Charles Foster Kane. At the very beginning of the film, we watch the man die, and he says the word Rosebud. Then we see a newsreel that involves a telling of his entire life story. Then we see a reporter who has been assigned the task to find out the meaning of Rosebud. The film involves 9 sequences, 5 of which are flashbacks. The second is that newsreel. However, when the reporter is going out and interviewing people, he doesn't conduct it in a way that the story is told chronologically. We, the audience, are required to make the connections and fill in the blanks and come to a conclusion in regards to his life and the meaning of Rosebud. Some of you might be familiar with Quentin Tarantino and how he delivers the story in an interesting way by juxtaposing the scenes out of sequence. So the beginning of the film that we see isn't always the beginning of the story. The end of the film doesn't always revolve around the end of the story. It might be in the middle of the story, like in Pulp Fiction. Kill Bill involves the story of the bride, otherwise known as Beatrix, and how her wedding day is ruined by the death squad that she once became a part of, and how she exacts revenge on those teammates and its ringleader, Bill. But it also involves flashbacks to when she was training to become one of the death squad members. And it's really interesting because the beginning of the film, we get a sense of what has happened, but then, we see her coming out of a coma. We see her fighting with one of her teammates, but it's not the very first person that she fights on her list of revenge. Memento by the Nolan brothers is one of my favorite films because of how the plot exposes the audience to its story. Obviously, story is chronological, but it's chronological because we, the audience, piece together all of these slices of life in the film, and we put it together so that it makes sense chronologically. Memento is told backwards. So the beginning of the film is actually the last bit of the story. And then after that ends, we are flashed back to a prior moment just leading up to that final moment. So it gives the audience some context so that we can say, oh, that's what led up to this event. And then after that happens, we are brought back even farther. So each piece of the puzzle is exposed to us so that at the very end of the film, we see the very beginning of the story. Brilliant film, told in a really, really interesting way. Rashomon is a really interesting story because it revolves around the rape and murder of a couple of individuals, but the story is told by a handful of characters that each one, as they're telling the story, are flashing back to what they think really happened. We, the audience, put those pieces together and we start seeing what really did happen, and we start seeing who these characters really are. The Godfather, too, is the story of Michael Corleone as he takes over the family business, but we see a number of flashbacks as to how his father started the family business and how they parallel one another. Forrest Gump involves the story of a man who's sitting on a bus stop bench, and he tells these strangers about what he's done that led him to this point in his life. The Sixth Sense is interesting in that we, the audience, are under the assumption that these characters and these things have actually happened, and then through a series of quick flashbacks and montage, we, the audience, get a better understanding of what's really going on in the story.